Do you want to create a prosperous and abundant life? Well, if you're like most people, of course you do. But how far do you think you'd get if you were dragging a 5-ton ball and chain behind you? Not very far, right? Well, that's the effect of resentment and grudges. And all too often we don't realize we have that excess baggage. Howdy, this is Rod Martin Jr., artist, writer, software engineer, and lifelong student of comparative religion. And today I have a special treat for you. 5 tips for mastering forgiveness, setting yourself free so you can create a life of abundance. You know, forgiveness isn't always easy, but it can be if you have the right ingredients. But first, let me tell you a little bit about myself so you know where I'm coming from. I've been a Hollywood artist with screen credit, working with 2-time Academy Award-winning designer Saul Bass. I've been first-place award-winning essayist and short story writer. I've been co-author of a published novel. And I've been a software engineer with a bachelor's degree, summa cum laude. But you know, all of that doesn't matter. To me, they're not that significant. What is important to me is spirituality. Throughout most of my life, I've experienced miracles, dozens of them. It could take hours to tell you about all of them, but I will tell you about what is perhaps the most startling and public of them. And this was the day I first understood what forgiveness was all about. It was a day of miracles. Late one afternoon in 1977, while driving along Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles, rush hour was thick and progress was painfully slow or non-existent. Then, within a 2-minute period, 6 events happened, each with a different car swerving without warning into the meager space before my car. If I had not responded quickly enough, there would have been a collision each time. I became increasingly frustrated and angry. After the 6th time, I felt rage building up inside of me. Then something snapped me out of it. The negative feelings disappeared. Suddenly, I found myself taking 100% responsibility, not only for my own frustration and anger, but also for their intrusions. And when you take that much responsibility, you can no longer be a victim. Forgiveness becomes effortless. At this point, I felt as light as a cloud, happy. Then I remembered the miracles I had experienced before. I got a picture in my mind of wide open spaces and smooth sailing all the way to my destination. I let go of that thought, and with the perfect faith that it was done. Immediately, cars started evacuating the center westbound lane ahead of me, turning into the already crowded lanes left and right. Even today, I don't understand how there was enough room for those extra cars. Within 5 seconds, 2 miles of center lane had been evacuated. An estimated 700 cars had moved out of the way. And for 4 minutes, I traversed that gauntlet without one car turning into that empty space. Now, it took me 30 years to learn most of the lessons from that day. And it took me 34 years to realize that the first 6 cars to move out of the way were the very same ones that had cut me off before. My forgiveness of them had been that complete. Now listen to this. The age of miracles never ended. People have merely been taught that they couldn't. All it takes is one individual with sufficient faith to move mountains. Imagine what a team could do. Okay, now here's the 5 tips for mastering forgiveness. First tip, awareness. You have to be aware not only of what you're thinking, but also what you're feeling. Awareness resides in conscious thought, but your attention resides in subconscious feeling. And if you're unaware of your feelings, that can sometimes control you. But wouldn't you rather have it the other way around? Wouldn't you like to be in control of your feelings? Well, newsflash, we already are. But instead of exercising that control with optimum effect, we usually wait for our surroundings to tell us how to feel. Instead of waiting for something nice to happen in order to feel happiness, decide to feel happy. Laugh out loud. And if you insist on it being more difficult, you deprive yourself of all that joy. When I discovered this technique, I went from darkest depression to enthusiasm in seconds. Of course, never avoid negative thoughts and feelings. That will only sweep them under the carpet of your mind. You need to shine the light of awareness on them and then to replace them with positive and loving thoughts and feelings. So practice awareness of what you're thinking and feeling. True forgiveness is an act of awareness. Love seems scarce or even impossible when you're betrayed or when you're attacked by a stranger, but this is when you need it most. Imagine that you have an infinite well of abundance, a reservoir of love to call upon. I call this the abundance attitude. But with love, you need to let go of attachments. Attachments will only trap you. For instance, if someone steals your prized iPad, realize that you are not that iPad. Realize that it was never permanently yours anyway. In a dozen years, 100, or even 1,000, that iPad will be meaningless to you. You need to practice unconditional love like that of a parent for their infant child. When the baby throws food onto the carpet, you don't stop loving the child. The carpet isn't that important. And the source of all things, the owner of this universe, will never stop loving any of his children. Be like him. Practice unconditional love for all your fellow humans and the spiritual children who reside in them. This leaves no room for judging others. Judging is someone else's responsibility. True forgiveness is an act of love. 100% responsibility may seem insulting to some when we're talking about the victim taking responsibility for the crime against them. But realize this: those who feel insulted are thinking of blame, not responsibility. Blame is a negative attitude. Responsibility is entirely positive. With 100% responsibility, there's no room for blame. Blame becomes impossible. There's no room for being a victim either. So forgiveness becomes effortless. Why? Because you take 100% responsibility. Combined with unconditional love, you can forgive anyone of anything. And that's important. You won't have time for regrets and resentment. True forgiveness is an act of responsibility. Confidence in the realm of mortals is an imperfect attitude. You can be 50% confident or even 99.999% confident, and miracles still won't happen. The miracle of forgiveness may prove elusive. Only with an unshakable and perfect confidence can you be pregnant with the spirit of forgiveness. It should be obvious you can't be half pregnant. You're either there or you're not. You either do or you do not. When the disciple Peter stepped out of his storm-tossed boat onto the unsettled Sea of Galilee, he had lost all reasonableness. There were no longer any reasons why he could not stand on the water before his master. It's only when doubt crept back into his thoughts that he sank into the water. True forgiveness is an act of faith. And the fifth tip, utter humility. Now this can be a tough one. This is the opposite of ego. In fact, you need to remove self from the equation and to grant value to everyone around you. Humility is not groveling, but it is placing someone else's needs ahead of your own. And you have to do this with love and gratitude. Of course, you also have to do it with wisdom. Humility may not mean giving money to everyone who asks for it. Sometimes they may need a recommendation for a good book or tips on how to make their own fortune. Teach a man to fish, and he eats for a lifetime. That's wise compassion. Your focus needs to remain on helping others with the faith that your own needs are already taken care of. True forgiveness is an act of humility. So meditate on these 5 elements: awareness, unconditional love, 100% responsibility, unshakable confidence or faith, and utter humility. That's what I did in 1977 that helped me discover true forgiveness, and I'm happy to have had the opportunity to share these with you now. This is Rod Martin Jr., looking forward to helping you more with your life preparation so you can live more fully.